If you want to use Fusion for motion graphics, then here's 8 skills that all Fusion users should know. Something I've seen recently in digital creations is this really nice grainy shadow on animations. There's a ton of tutorials on how to do this in After Effects, but none in Fusion, so here's how you do it. So I have this little animation going on inside of Fusion, and this polygon mask is masking a background node to create this shape here, the shape of this eye. The first thing I'm going to do is bring in another background node and turn the alpha down to 0 and feed this into the node tree as a background to the shape. Now this alpha thing is actually an important first step that you don't want to miss because it's going to allow us to separate it from the rest of our composition before we merge it over our background. Next I'm going to bring in a new black background node and merge this after the original shape. I'll then feed our existing shape mask into this black background, which means that we've essentially duplicated this shape here, and you can see that if I move it in the merge. We're going to use a second one as our shadow, and to do that we're going to grab a little ellipse mask and feed it into the merge of the black background and tick on invert. And then just position it off slightly from the original shape. Then I'll bring up the soft edge just to feather that out slightly, and this now acts as our light source, so we can move this about, place it wherever we want and change the size, etc. To add the grainy texture though, we're going to have to take the output of the original background and feed it into another merge before the shadow. And we're going to use this link to add the grain into the composition. There's a couple of different types of grain in Fusion, but the one I like best is this film grain one, which you can find in Tools, Film. I'll then add that in before the merge in our second link here, and we can increase the size and strength of that. Right now it's adding grain to the whole shape, which we don't want. So the final step here is just to take in that light source mask that we created before and feed this into the merge for the film grain. And there you have it, some lovely grainy shadows on your animations. Now if you play that back, you'll notice that it's seething at quite a fast rate. So if you want to lock that in, you can either time lock the grain, or you can add some kind of Posterize time effect after the grain to reduce its speed. If you're not sure how to do that, then don't worry, just follow the link in the description. You can download my free Posterize Time plugin for Fusion. Creating little subtle movements and imperfections in your animations is really powerful, and the best way to do this is using the Perturb Modifier. You can add this on any shape, and all you do is come down to the keyframe icon for the shape, right click it, and there we could select Perturb. If we then jump over to the Modifiers tab, we'll be able to see all the controls for that modifier. If you play that back, you'll see that it's warping and floating around, and we've got a bunch of controls in the modifier to adjust how it does that. We can adjust the speed and the strength, as well as how jagged the shape gets. One thing to watch out for though when you're using this is that the shape will only perturb on the basis of how many points are in the shape. So sometimes it makes sense to go back and add more points in just to get the look that you're going for. But apart from that, it's a really cool look for motion graphics. This is one of these ones where I have to show a bit of humility because I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't realise you could do this until very recently. So here I've got this horizontal position animation going on, but I want to change the position of the whole animation vertically. This could be a little bit annoying in Fusion because the X and the Y axis are locked together as one parameter. Now if you change the Y axis on one keyframe, you then have to go back and adjust it on all the other ones too, otherwise your animation goes diagonally. But if you click on the node and come up to the viewer, you can highlight both of your points and just click and drag the animation to anywhere else on the canvas. It'll keep the same distance traveled and everything else will just be kept consistent with the animation. And if you already knew that, then congratulations, you're officially smarter than I am, which to be honest wouldn't be hard. Creating animations to the beat of music or to sound effects in Fusion can be a little bit tricky because the audio doesn't always come through to the Fusion page, but there's a really quick fix for this. If we hit Shift and Spacebar to bring up our tool search, we can search for the Media In node. Now we're used to using these if we want to bring video footage into Fusion, but as of version 18 of DaVinci Resolve, this little node has become a lot more powerful. First of all, if we come over to the audio tab, we can change the drop down from none to timeline audio, which will bring the audio from our timeline into the composition. And the cool thing about this is that you don't even need to connect this up to the rest of the node tree. As long as it's in there, it will play back the audio from your timeline. If you do connect the node up though, something else you could do is go into the image tab and change the media source to background, which will bring in whatever sits underneath the Fusion clip in the edit page. And that's super useful because it means you can have your Fusion compositions separate from your footage and you could color grade them differently on the color page. Now, I already made a video showing you how to create your own effects inside of Fusion, which I'll leave a link to up here if you fancy watching that. But something I forgot to mention in it was this. Every node in Fusion has this little toggle here to turn on versions, and this is a really useful tool if you're creating compositions. In a nutshell, it lets you create an entirely new version of whatever node you're working on within that node, including any keyframed animations that you might have going on. So by toggling it on, your existing controls on that node will be saved on version 1, and you could click on version 2 to create something completely different. It's a really quick way of being able to toggle between different colors or different styles, which is really handy if you're doing client work because you might be asked to do different versions of the same thing, so super useful thing to know. Okay, so this one isn't so much a skill, but it is really useful to know about. Sometimes Fusion runs quite slow. Maybe you're working on a big composition, or maybe your computer's just not powerful enough to handle what you're doing. One way to get around this though is to right click on the play bar next to the transport controls, and here we see we've got a bunch of options to make our playback smoother. If high quality is checked on, you're going to want to check that off. High quality essentially means that the viewer is outputting exactly what's going to be rendered in the final export, which is almost never necessary, so I always recommend to have that turned off. We can also temporarily turn off motion blur if we want. Motion blur can be notoriously hard on your computer, so it's best to just turn that off if you're working on compositions. Proxy is basically going to reduce the amount of pixels that are processed within the viewer. So instead of processing every pixel, it's going to process every 3 or so pixels. And you can adjust the ratio that you do this at in the Fusion settings page, but regardless, you're going to want to have that turned on. Auto proxy is a similar kind of function, but it's for real-time adjustments instead. So when you have this switched on, if you're making adjustments in the inspector window, the quality will drop quite significantly when you're making that adjustment, and then it will bounce back to full quality after you've made it. And it's just a way of being able to speed up your workflow in Fusion. I should say too that these controls are only for playback. You don't have to turn them back on again when you go to export your project. It will be high quality, your motion blur will be on, and all that stuff will look great. I talked a little bit about this in my last video, but instances are actually a lot more powerful than I've already shown you. So let's assume this is what we want to try and create here. Well, I've got my main text set up in Fusion with a little animation going on. Now I could just copy this text node with all of its keyframes and all of its settings, paste a copy and feed it into another merge, then move the position of it. I could then connect its output to a third merge and do the same again. And this works, there's absolutely nothing wrong with working this way, but let's say I then want to change the font, for example. Well, now I have to update 2 nodes instead of 1, and if I wanted to say move about some of the keyframes of the animation, well, I'd have to do that in the first node and then redo it again in the second node, and it just all gets a little bit messy. This is where instance nodes come in. So I'm just going to delete this copy just now. I'm going to copy my original again, but when I paste it, this time I'm going to hold shift when I do that. Now you'll see I've got a new copy of the node with this thin green connection to the master version. And if we look in the inspector window, all the parameters are green, which is telling us that these are all being controlled by another node. Now I'm going to feed these into our merge nodes again. And now if I want to update the font, I could just update it once and it changes across all of them. And if you did want some of the parameters to be slightly different, then all you have to do is just go in, right click the parameter, select de-instance, and then that lets us change that separately to the original one. The great thing about instances is that you can mask them separately as well, so what I'm going to do here is a little reveal effect as the word animates in. Essentially, you get the benefits of multiple nodes without having the hassle of having to update more than one, so it's really useful. By the way, if you want to make some cool text animations like these, I've done a whole video on that, so I'll link that above if you fancy checking that out. And last but not least is this little number counter here. Now we'll start with the Text Plus node, and the first thing we want to do is right click on the node and go to Edit Controls. And this will bring up a window that's going to let us add a brand new parameter to our text node in the inspector window. And that'll make a lot more sense once we actually go through this. So first of all, I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it counter, but you could call it anything you want. I want this to produce a number, so the type should be number. And I want this parameter to be on the text page too, so I'll select text. Next, I'll input the range, and this could be anything you want, really depends on how high you're going to count your number to. I'm going to go to 10,000, so I'll put that in. And then a slider control is perfect for this too. That's exactly what we need. Now once I hit OK, you'll see this new parameter appear on our text node, which is the first step done. Now right now this parameter isn't controlling anything, it's basically just a blank slider that produces a number from 0 to 10,000. But this is really handy for us because if we come up to our text box, right click and go to expression, we could click on this little pick whip thing here and drag it down to our counter slider, and now the slider is changing the number of the text and the text box. And now if we want to animate this number, all we have to do is add keyframes on the counter slider. And if you want to add in like a currency symbol or something like that, all you need to do is go to the expression box and add ... open quotation, and then add your symbol and close the quotation again. And you could do that before the number as well, just by reversing the order. So open quotation, symbol, close the quotation, ... and then the name of your parameter, which is counter. Basically, you can add any text you want inside those quotations, and it'll add it alongside the number as well. If you're still watching this far in the video, then thank you. I've got a small favor to ask of you though. I want you to leave a comment with the name of a YouTuber that you really love the motion graphics style of. It could be anything from anybody, just something you want to learn how to create, because I'm going to use that as the basis to make future DaVinci Resolve tutorials. So definitely leave me a comment and we'll see who gets the most likes. In the meantime, hit that subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, thumbs down if you didn't, and I'll see you in the next one.